So today we'll be covering a few topics relating to building Metro-style apps that print, both how it works and how to create your content. You'll see how you can easily create or easily print from your apps using the print contract, as well as customize the Microsoft print experience to meet your app's needs. We'll be showing you demos and code examples so that you can get out there and start building apps that print right away. And we'll both be available after the talk is over, probably either up here or out in the hallway to answer some one-on-one questions and have some more further discussion. I hope you all got a chance to catch the keynote where you learned about building great Metro-style apps with your language of choice. Because here we'll cover how to use your preferred language to format content and generate high-quality printed output from your apps. Windows 8 is Windows reimagined. Your users will love printing from your app. So focus on the content and leave the complexities of the printers and underlying print system to Windows. And to create these apps, there's three things we really want you to remember from our discussion today. How to register for the print contract using the print manager and support printing of nicely formatted content. How you can customize and utilize the Microsoft-provided print experience for all your printing needs. And most importantly, how Windows takes care of the printers for you, freeing you up to be much more creative. So go out there and make your users' imagination reality. Focus on the content and not on the printing, and allow your users the opportunity to take their content to go. But rather than me continue talking about it, let me show you what I mean by diving straight into the demo. So let's see. A paper airplane, one of life's simplest toys. So I bet that every one of you out there has built paper airplanes with your friends before. Let's see how well this thing flies. Not so good. It is pretty good. And I got a stack of these up here for you guys, so once the talk's over, feel free to come up, grab one, fold it up, see if you could throw it further than I could. So on your tablets, you'll find the Aircraft app. And let's go ahead and switch over here. And this is an app that was shown during the keynote on Tuesday, and you might have already had a chance to play with it on your tablets. The whole point of the app is to design a custom paper airplane and then print it out. Get this going. There we go. It's a Metro-style app created using HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS that a group of college interns created this past summer. And the demo that we're showing up here is a slightly modified version of the Aircraft app, mainly just to show off some more printing functionality. But all of this printing functionality is available for you to use right now in the Windows Developer Preview. And what I want you to take away is that it's easy to incorporate printing of well-formatted content in your app, as well as easy to hook into the Microsoft print experience. So what you see here is a simple airplane, and I can rotate it around however I want. Now on your tablets, you can do this via touch. So you can just kind of move it around. But let's take it a step further. So when I designed paper airplanes with my friends as a kid, one of the things I loved to do was draw on it, personalize it to my style. So you can see here on the 3D view of my plane, I've already customized it a bit with an image on this side, some text on this other side. But let's do something more fun. So let me pick this blank side right here. Let's take a picture of you all and stick it on the plane. All right, let's do it this way. A little bit blurry from there. Not bad. All right, so let's go ahead and shove it on this side, and it'll just cut it down to fit the size. Beautiful. All right, so now we got the plane. So now let's go to print it. Windows has always had great support for printing, but where is it in Windows 8? So everyone knows file print in Windows today. Truthfully, when my relatives call me up asking for tech support, one of the scenarios I could have them accomplish in a single word is print, because users know where to find it, how to use it. In Windows 8, printing is found in the Devices charm. That's where users will look for it, and they can feel confident that it's there whenever they need it. Accessing the charm is easy in touch from a swipe from the right-hand side, but on my non-touch computer, I simply click down here, click on Devices, and you'll see the Devices charm pop up with Print and Play to Present. So I'm just going to go ahead and select the printer sitting up here right with me. Please ignore the driver error for now. All right, so what you're seeing here on screen is just like the back of the plane. But what you're seeing here on the print experience is what's actually going to print. So I want to pause here for a second. The Aircraft app developers did not first take me to a printer-friendly view. So I'm still looking at the plane over here. But the preview itself makes it clear that what's printing is a flattened down version of the plane with the fold lines, so that I could fold it up afterwards. And we'll come back to show you some of the methods they use to accomplish this in a bit. Here you can see the live preview, as well as some options I may want to select prior to printing. And by the way, you as the app developer can customize which options show up here, and can even choose an option on behalf of the user before the experience shows up. And the Aircraft app developers have also done that here. This too will show you in a bit. And please also notice the More Settings button. This brings you to an additional page where the user can set even more options. And this additional page is either Microsoft supplied or printer manufacturer supplied, depending on the driver. Hopefully you got a chance to catch the keynote where we showed how HP customized the Metro style printing experience with their driver. So I'm already happy with the options chosen. I'm just going to go ahead and print. Does some quick validation. Sends it to the printer right up here with me. And it says processing. Please wait momentarily. And I hear it kicking up. And we'll go ahead and let that print. So what if I'm not quite sure how to fold the thing? Well, luckily, this app includes easy-to-use instructions. So let's navigate to the instructions via the app bar and take a look. So on your tablets, you can use touch and just swipe in from the bottom. On my computer, I simply right-click on the app and click View Instructions. And the printout is done. Here's the plane that we just printed out. So I can sit here and I can scroll through the step-by-step instructions right up here, as you can see. But what if I want to take these instructions to go? So again, I'm going to use the Devices charm and choose Print. And again, I'll pick the printer right up here with me. So as before with the plane template, the Aircraft developers did not first take me to a printer-friendly view. They did not need the extra step, nor did they really want to take me away from their app. So I'm still looking at the step-by-step instructions on the left-hand side, but the printout's customized to be great on paper. And they did this layout completely using HTML and CSS. But let's take it one step further. So for the instructions, we had also asked the interns to provide a print experience via a button. And this is mainly to show off the platform functionality, as it's noted that there are some instances where it makes contextual sense to have a print button. So down here in the app bar, I'll just go ahead and print this while I'm here. All right, so down here in the app bar, we have another button that says Print Instructions. And if I click on that, it launches the print charm directly. And it brings me into the same experience the user would get from swiping into the device charm and choosing Print. So again, now that we're here, I'll send even another job to the printer. So at the end of the day, from a few minutes of playing around with this app, we were able to create a customized paper airplane complete with drawing, text, and a picture of you all, and print it out with the folding instructions. And how difficult was it to build this app? Well, of their team of 3, one of them hadn't even used JavaScript before this. But after deciding what app to build, it was a fairly quick ramp up and only a few weeks to get to where the app is today. And in fact, we have 2 of the 3 interns that built this app sitting right up here in the front row. So might as well give them a quick round of hands. Let me switch back. Now I realized I just showed you a lot of stuff. This included using the print contract to launch the entire Microsoft print experience from both the Devices charm as well as a button, and also printing nicely formatted content which was not displayed on the screen. And soon I'll be showing you how to accomplish these in your apps. But first, before we talk about how to use the print contract, you really need to understand some of the core concepts in Metro style printing. Because when we first went through the process of brainstorming, designing, and ultimately building the Metro style printing experience, we really took a step back to focus on printing. We really wanted to provide you with the best experience possible so that you can provide your users with the best experience possible. So in Windows 8, just focus on the content. The print contract is content-centric. Windows will take care of the devices that are connected, and will also take care of the underlying print system to ensure that your carefully formatted content comes out of your printer looking just the way you want it to. So let's take a look into some of the pieces that comprise the architecture. First and foremost, we have your app. Your app has the content which is to be printed. We call this the document source. The content to be printed may be changing as the user navigates your app, going to different areas or performing different tasks. But Windows understands this, and it'll let you know when it's time to print. And how does Windows do this? Well, in Windows 8, we have the Print Manager. And you can think of the Print Manager as the middleman that coordinates everything relating to printing. So rather than you having to reach out to Windows and understand what Windows is doing and what printers might be connected, the Print Manager does this all for you. And then you have the print task. So when the print manager lets you know that it's time to print, you have to tell Windows what to print. And with that information, Windows creates a print task. And you can think of a print task a lot like an asynchronous operation, in that when the operation is complete, the content's ready to be printed. And to do this, the print task contains a little bit of your app and a little bit of Windows. So digging into the print task further, you see that it contains both the what as well as the how, both the content to be printed as well as how that content should be printed, because both are important to form the end result. So in this case, when we're referring to the document source, it's really about the content, the stuff that you want to print. And in terms of options, these actually come from multiple places. Because on the one hand, the user's sitting there in the print experience, selecting choices. Do I want color? Do I want black and white, portrait, or landscape? But on the other hand, you're the app developer, and you might want to add some of your input into the process prior to the final printout. And these options are summed up into what's called the print task options. So now let's see how this all fits together into the printing system. Now remember I said I work on the print subsystem, so at first I really wanted to get into the details about how the print stack works. Because really, in Windows 8, we have invested a lot of time in making improvements which make printers and Windows work better together. But your app is way up here, and you care far more about the content that you want to print than how Windows and printers happen to communicate with each other. So you just need to get the content right, and Windows can do the rest. So let's dig into the items that you really need to know about. Windows manages the printer for you. So remember I referred to the print manager as the middleman? Well, when you want to support the print contract, you let the print manager know. And when something triggers printing, the print manager will call your app back and ask what needs to be printed. And in some circumstances, the workflow in your app may make more sense if you want to direct the user to print something right now. And the print manager can help you out there as well. You just tell it that you want something to print, and it'll get the user experience up and running for you. The print manager is the thing that communicates with the print subsystem so that you don't have to. Next, we have the Microsoft-provided print experience built directly into Windows for you to use. And the print manager is actually in charge of this UI and determines and controls when it is shown. Print experience makes it easy for the user to set some of the most common printing options like copies, orientation, and color without you having to do any work at all. And it also comes with a built-in print preview because we found that users are a lot happier with their printout when they can see it first. Print experience is customizable by both you, the app developer, as well as the printer manufacturer. So you can customize the first page of the experience, and then the printer manufacturer can customize that more settings area of the experience. And for this presentation, we'll just be focusing on the app developer side of things. Now, Windows has made it easier than ever to generate printed content from your Metro-style apps. If you're writing a Metro-style app using HTML5 or JavaScript, just use the power of HTML to get it done. And if you prefer XAML, we handle that for you as well. So just format the content in the way that's most natural to you. Leverage all the HTML, JavaScript, and XAML knowledge you already have. Because what we've done here is we've bridged the gap between XPS and your app. So you can build the app the way you want to, build your screen layout the way you want to, and you can still feel confident about getting great printed output on paper. And now there are instances where we understand that apps still want full control over the end printed layout. And you can utilize some great new Direct2D graphics APIs to control both your screen layout and printed layout at a very detailed level. And of course, all Metro-style apps use XPS under the covers. And while XPS is not new in Windows 8, we have added support for the ECMA OpenXPS standard. And the important thing to note is that unless you need to build your own XPS from scratch, this doesn't really matter to you. But if you do, you can submit XPS directly into the print system. So now that you know a bit about how the pieces work, let's jump into Metro-style apps that use HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS. So how to use the print contract in your Metro-style app using HTML and JavaScript? Well, it all starts with registering for the contract with the print manager. This tells Windows that you have something that you want to print. Now, you don't have to tell Windows exactly what you need to print at this point. You just need to let it know that you can print. And before going on, I wanted to make a comment about registration. Because some ask, why not have print always there? Why do I need to enable printing in the first place? That's actually a very interesting question. So we thought about this a lot, and we kept arriving back to apps and scenarios that didn't really want their users to print. A good example being something like a game. So the app developer never intended its content to be printed and never even wanted to provide a good printing experience in the first place. So when the user chooses print in an app like that, would what the user expects to print actually be what the app provides? And if not, would the user get upset, perhaps leave negative ratings on the app? We decided to avoid such issues and just have the app decide themselves when they wanted to support printing. So printing can be triggered in a couple of ways. Remember in the aircraft app, I showed that the user can start printing either from the device's print charm or from a button. And when printing's triggered, Windows needs to know what to print. So the print manager asks you as the app to initialize the print task with the content that you want printed. Now Windows provides a new HTML5 and JavaScript API called getHTMLPrintDocument, which you can use to retrieve what you want to print from the HTML5 DOM. And the great thing about HTML5 is that Windows takes over from here. So just like in a web browser, Windows knows how to break your content up into pages, of course taking into account any special CSS that you happen to use. Windows also knows how to generate the preview, and when the user clicks print, Windows knows how to get the final content ready for the printer. And here's how it's accomplished. So you make it very easy to enable printing via the device charm. All you need to do is run a small amount of code to hook up the contract. So we're first going to go ahead and initialize the print manager. In Windows 8, printing lives in windows.graphics.printing. So this first function, getForCurrentView, it retrieves the print manager object for the current view. Then the print task initializing event will be raised when the print manager needs to get the print process going. And when this happens, the print manager is basically asking your app for the content to be printed. So in the most simplest form, that just means printing what's in the current document via the getHTMLPrintDocument API. And then the app needs to use the initialize print task API to tell the print manager exactly what it wants to print. Sometimes it's important to have a print button. A good example is printing your boarding pass at the end of your checkout process prior to flying out to this conference. So when you reach the end of the process, you might have been looking at a page that had weather information, hotel information, close by activities. But really all you want to do is print your boarding pass. So in apps such as these, it's possible to add a button that says something like print boarding pass. And that launches the print charms directly, giving the user a bit more context of what's going to show up. So remember, we also showed this in the aircraft app for printing the instructions. You simply tie up a button to this function, showPrintUI, which is available in the print manager. And this results in launching, again, the same print experience that would be had from the user swiping in and choosing print. And it's that easy to hook up printing using the print contract in your Metro-style app using HTML5 and JavaScript. But just because you're writing in HTML5 and JavaScript doesn't mean your print experience has to be limited. There's no need to create printer-friendly views in order to guarantee correct, nicely formatted output for your users. So if you're already familiar with how printing works in Internet Explorer, then you already have a head start here. You simply use the knowledge from IE printing and jump right in. Because we allow you to format all your printed output using all of what Cascading Style Sheets or CSS has to offer in IE. And additionally, you can use events before and after printing to run custom code. Now I wanted to re-show this to you just to refresh your memory from the demo before I show you how to accomplish it. So as evident, you can see different things on screen versus what is being printed. And you'll notice here the new Microsoft printing experience with the live preview and some options to select for the user prior to hitting print. Now there's many ways you can use CSS to format your printed layout. Some common uses include hiding specific content from being printed, adding specific content for printing, changing margins or changing the way you paginate content, and much more. And luckily, there's many tutorials available online, including on MSDN, to help get you started here. But in terms of formatting content, the primary use the interns had for CSS was using it to show and hide elements for printing. So this allowed them to easily avoid a printer-friendly view. So after they declared the printer style sheet in their file, they decided for each element if they wanted to show it or hide it for printing or for screen view. So here, for printing, the aircraft app developers are hiding the View Manager container, which contains all of the UI elements that you saw when I was designing the plane, except that little 3D preview model that was up in the upper right-hand corner. And then next, they're hiding that 3D preview as well, since we don't want that printing out. And for screen, we're basically hiding all of the content that was saved specifically for printing. Now, in the aircraft app, when it came to building the instructions layout, the developers laid out each item in a grid. So what we're showing here is a snippet from their instructions layout. The specific plane model being laid out here is what they referred to as the Dart. So they chunked up each item in the Dart's instructions, be it an image of how to fold the plane or the text accompanying it, and then they laid out the items once at a time in a grid with specific padding and margins. So you might have seen this grid technology either in the keynote as well as other sessions that have talked about CSS. So here you can see they use no margin for all elements, but for padding, the way it works is top, right, bottom, and left. So what they've done here is they've used 10 pixels of padding at the bottom for each element. And additionally, they set specific alignment properties on the row and column to ensure that they show up in the correct location on the printout. Next, what we're showing here is two things. So the aircraft developers ended up printing the folding instructions on 2 pages. So once they laid out the elements for printing, they wanted to ensure that no unnecessary or unwanted page breaks snuck into the final print layout. So they're using this page break inside a void property. And they're also forcing a specific size on the content to ensure it fits within the page. So here they decided to set the width and height to 99%, just to be extra safe in case the printer didn't support the edge-to-edge printing. Now, additionally, there may be times where you want to use events before and after printing to run custom code. So you can use these events in conjunction with CSS to achieve some more advanced scenarios. So you can use these to detect and react when a page is about to be printed. A primary use for these, or for this scenario, is used to change content on the page and then change it back prior or once printing is done. So for the aircraft app, what's being done here is that when before print is triggered, the content is readied and added for printing. There it goes. So the way they do this is by adding one root element and then adding the print content a piece at a time, sometimes asynchronously. And then when printing is complete and the after print event has been fired, the content added for printing is removed so the document doesn't retain the old plane in memory. And you can also use these events to do things such as changing the document's background color for printing, because maybe the background of your app is black and you don't want to waste all your users' ink. So what you can do is change the background color to white when the before print event is fired, and then revert it back as desired when the after print event is fired. And as with CSS, there's many tutorials available online how to use these, including on MSDN to get you started. And the result of the previous tutorials is something like this, a great end printing experience for your users. So remember, all the aircraft app developers had to do was focus on getting their content right and let Windows take care of the rest. So they were easily able to enable printing, provide a good printing experience, and via CSS and some events were able to create properly formatted output. Now, inside the Windows Developer Preview build, you'll find a Metro-style sample that uses HTML5 and JavaScript, which showcases the printing functionality that was just discussed here. And the link is provided at the end of this talk. One of the things we learned from early use of tablets was not only that users wanted to print, but that app developers wanted to be able to provide a unique printing experience for their end users. So in addition to creating great content, you can utilize and customize the Microsoft-provided print experience to meet your app's needs. So in Windows 8, we provide a brand new printing experience for you to use in your apps. It's easy to hook up to, easy to use, and it will delight your users. Though we do realize that not one size fits all, and thus you can easily customize the print experience to suit your app's needs. So there's 3 primary ways that you can customize the print experience. You can choose which of the standard settings show up, you can reorder these options, and you can set the default choice of these options so that when the experience pops up, that it has an option already pre-selected for the user. And the user is still free to change the option at this point, but many users don't. And when I say standard options, I'm actually referring to these. So Microsoft provides 13 options to add and remove from the front of your experience, as well as set default options on. These are common items such as copies, orientation, paper source, etc. You see them all up here. And if the printer chosen does not support these, then they won't even show up on the end printing experience. And by default, copies, orientation, and color show up on the first page of the experience, unless you as the app developer decide otherwise. And remember, I also mentioned that the user can change more options by clicking on the More Settings button in the dialog or in the experience. So the printer manufacturer can actually customize this part of the experience if they choose. Thus, the user can still get to certain options via that method, even if they're not present on the first page of the experience. Now, choosing which items appear on the first page of the experience, as well as what order they appear in, is extremely simple. Just play around with the displayed options property of the print task options. You can simply add or remove the options you care about, and the changes are reflected right there on the print experience. So for example, in the aircraft app, the developers decided they wanted to change both the options and the order in which they appear. So they cleared the list, and then they added copies, color mode, media size, and media type in that order, which then show up in the printing experience in that order. And next, you may want to set some default values for options in the print experience. Again, when I say default value, I mean the value that's pre-selected for the user when the print experience launches. And it's useful to note that not every feature is supported by every print device. For example, your printer might not do color, it might not do stapling. Thus, it's useful to watch out for exceptions when setting defaults on particular values. So what we're showing here is setting the media size to letter and setting the color mode to color and then catching exceptions if they're thrown. And if you do try this on your own, you'll need to set the defaults when the print task previewing event is raised. I just showed you a lot of samples directly from the Aircraft app. Remember, it was easy to register for the print contract. And then all the interns needed to do was focus on the layout of the content. I showed you the ability to use CSS as well as events before and after printing to modify your content, so the screen and printed output didn't have to be the same. And then I showed you how to customize the print experience by choosing which options show up, reordering those options, and then setting the default values of these options. And guess what? If you're a XAML developer, you also get all the greatness that Windows has to offer. Everything we just talked about using the print contract in Metro-style apps that use HTML5 is also relevant in context of Metro-style apps that use XAML. So just use XAML to lay out your content and let Windows take care of printing. So I'm going to invite Darren up here to talk a little bit more about how printing works in Metro-style apps that use XAML.
John?
There's that.
Can I bring my mic up?
So I wanted to take a couple of seconds of pause here and kind of get an idea of who we have in the audience. How many of you have used HTML for printing? Okay. How about XAML? How many of you have done it the hard way? So just a little interesting anecdote before I really get started here. I was sitting at lunch today and was chatting with some people, and they noticed my speaker badge and asked what I was going to be speaking about. And I said, I'm speaking about printing. Oh, you mean the thing in Windows that's always been left to us, and we have to go pick up, and we have to do all the hard work? Well, I want you to understand today that one of the things we really want to let you know is we've tried to make Windows 8 easier for you, the developer, to actually be able to print. There's a lot of great technologies out there that have evolved since printing first started 25 years ago. And we want to make sure that you can take advantage of those technologies easily and effectively. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first start by talking about XAML. I'm actually going to just quickly jump right into a demo. And I'm going to do something I've never done before, which is I'm actually going to do some code work right here on screen and show you kind of some of the power that XAML brings into the printing space. So I'm going to cover a lot of things in this demo. And the good news is the code that I'm starting with here is the actual code that's in your developer preview release that you have right now. This is the printing sample that was written for C#. Go through this, talk a little bit about how printing works in XAML. Then I'm going to make some changes to the sample application to show you that it really is easy to go do things and to use XAML to get your printing taken care of. Once we talk about that a little bit, I want to go through and talk a little bit about experiences and what it means to build a great printing experience, and most importantly, how you can be in control of the printing experience and you can actually give the user of your application real confidence that they're going to get something out there that they want. And I'm actually going to take that little bit of philosophy and transfer it into code and actually do something with it. So like I said, what I've got up here on the screen is actually the XAML printing, the Metro-style XAML app printing example that is actually in the developer SDK. You can pull it up, you can look at it. Kind of right here in the middle of it, but what I really want to go down to is I want to actually bring up this core function here, which is scenario 1 in it. And the purpose of this function is to initialize the scenario. I'll show you a little bit about how that works. So what's this scenario doing? Well, it starts off by creating a thing called a print document. The print document is a XAML element that's been designed to make it easy for you to do printing. In other words, it's the thing that understands that printer in XAML. Another way of talking about it, we talked about the document source a little bit before. In the print contract, this print document, well, it can be used as the document source. Now you'll also notice at the bottom of the function, let me highlight it to make it a little bit easier, that just like in the HTML5 JavaScript world that John just talked about, you need to go get the print manager, you need to register with it, and you need to tell it that your app knows how to print. You do this by setting a handler for the print task initializing event. So at this point, we've actually pretty much done everything you need to do to tell Windows that you're ready to print, with the exception of actually giving Windows something to print. Again, these lines of code should look really familiar. Initialize print task is the exact same API that you used in the HTML5 JavaScript example. In other words, the print manager, it's one of these new Windows runtime things, one of these new Windows contracts. It works the same way in XAML as it does in HTML5 and JavaScript. And we're going to talk a little bit later about how to use it from Direct2D and from C++ and along with XPS. So I asked the question about those of you that have used XAML to print before. You're probably thinking, oh, print document, I know about that. System.printing.print document, I've seen that before. I might have used it in Silverlight, I might have used it in WPF. There are some differences here. So while your knowledge and while your understanding almost maps perfectly into the way Windows 8 and Metro-style apps work, there are a couple of things that you need to be aware of. First of all, some names have changed. Excuse me. In the Silverlight and the .NET world, you had a print page event that would get raised, and that was your signal to give the XAML content that you wanted to print over the print subsystem. Well, the name's been changed. Everything works exactly the same. It's now the add pages event. So what happens? System raises an add page event. That means it's time to print. Give me the next XAML view that I want to print. But as you saw, Windows provides an experience for how printing works in the Metro world. And to do that, it has a couple of things that it needs to take care of. First of all, it needs to make sure your app is ready to actually print whatever you've specified in your document source. It wants to make sure that content is paginated and ready to go. That's where the paginate event happens. Whenever Windows realizes that, hey, the users might have done something here to change your page size or to change how your content looks on the paper, it asks you, by raising the paginate event, to go change your content and update it. You may choose not to update it. You may choose that you want to just keep using the same thing that you've got, or you may want to actually go repaginate at that point and do something completely new. Finally, there's the handler forget preview page. As John mentioned, all of our user research showed that users really want to see what's going to show up on that paper before it actually gets there. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, people that have used desktop publishing applications have seen the lorem ipsum or the gray box text or whatever, so it doesn't have to be a perfect thing, but they just want to have some confidence that, oh yeah, this actually fits on my page. It's what I expect. It's what I want. So because of that, we built Print Preview right into the default experience in Metro. In fact, it's built in so far that it's pretty much required. Your app's not going to look very good if you don't support Print Preview. In the XAML case, in the HTML5 case, as John called out, it's taken care of for you by Windows. The HTML print document and the document source that's generating HTML does it for you. Here in XAML, you actually have to do a little bit more work. XAML's going to ask you what needs to be printed. It's going to raise this get preview page event. It's going to tell you, hey, I need the first page. You can take and you can respond to that event by giving it the page. So I'm not going to take time to necessarily go through the rest of the code here because you guys can all go pull it up, but I will show you what this code actually does. So I'm going to go ahead and run it and launch the sample. This is, if you've looked in the samples, this is kind of the standard style for how they look. What you've got up on top is a description of what the scenario is, and then there's this little output box down here that shows what's supposed to be output when you run the sample. Well, like I said, that sample registers for the print contract, which means that if I come over here to the devices, I can see that the printer is actually offline, and sure enough it is because it fell asleep. Actually, more accurately, it's offline because I forgot to pull it out of John's computer and plug it into mine. And you'll notice that it's now online, ready to go. That's prior registration for the print contact. That gets the charm to show up. That gets it there. Now, it turns out that if I wanted to, I also have the show print UI API called, and just as John showed you, it can go up and bring up the app and actually make things print. And when I go in here, you see that it actually wants to print 2 pages. The first page that it wants to print is the entire contents of what we're showing on the screen. And then the second page that gets printed is just the little sample box there itself. So let's start by actually making some changes to the app to show you guys just exactly how easy it is. So to do that, get everything pulled out over here. Let me start by bringing up and adding some content in here. And I'm going to add here, oops, wrong one. See, I told you I normally don't code in front of people. It's a little embarrassing up here. So I'm going to go over here to my pictures, and I'm going to grab these great pictures that came from my most recent vacation. Not going to tell you where I went, but trust me, it was a fantastic vacation. Let's say I want to use one of these pictures to actually print. So I can come in here, I can come back to my app, I can come over here, and I'm going to find, down here in the XAML, I'm going to find the output section, and I'm going to change the content from being the image that was there to a new image. Run the app. Wait for it to come up. And now you notice that by just simply changing from one resource to another, I've completely changed. In other words, I just went and changed my XAML. I didn't have to write any new code. I didn't have to go load the bitmap. I didn't do anything. XAML took care of everything for me. I can go in. I can bring up the print experience. It's all ready to go. It's got the new content. It's there. It's ready. And that. But of course, the content doesn't fit very well on the screen. Traditionally, if you were doing printing, this all of a sudden becomes a lot of work. I've got to go figure out what my page size is, what my imageable area is. I got to do all the calculations. Let's say I want it centered. I got to go figure all that stuff out myself. Because I have the power of XAML working for me, I can now just let XAML take care of that. So let's jump back. Come in here. I'm going to change the width to 600. Change the fill to uniform to fill, and it's not wanting to take it for me. And I'm going to do one more thing while I'm here. I'm going to go ahead and change the pagination because you know what? I'm tired of doing that first page that just shows the output. So I'm just simply going to say, I'm just going to worry about what the output is. And so I'm just going to completely remove that line. Let's go ahead and run the output and see what that does for me. App comes up. First thing you'll notice, image now fits. I can bring up the print experience. Again, the image now fits. I didn't have to do any work there. You didn't see me do any math. I hate math. I didn't see me do any of it. I just simply told XAML what I wanted. I wanted the image to be 600 pixels wide, and I wanted it to fit in there. A lot easier. You get to focus on your content. You get to think about the things that matter to you. You don't have to worry about all of the stuff that we've done. All of the stuff that you have to do to actually make it print. You'll also notice down here, I now only have one page in the output. And to prove that, not that I think you doubt me, but I'll go ahead and kick it out. We'll actually print it. So the printer's spinning up right now, and as I keep talking, it'll print. So let's talk about experience a little bit. I've gone over kind of a little bit about how printing works in XAML and how it's just like printing works in HTML5 and JavaScript application. But let's actually talk about printing experiences. As you've already noticed, printing is a top-level experience in Windows. It's one of those contracts that shows up on the charms, just like share and just like search. John pointed out, users know where printing will be. They know that that's what's expected. But it doesn't mean you can not think about it. It doesn't mean you can kind of just get the default experience. It turns out printing can be kind of hard and can be kind of tricky. As we were designing Windows 8, there was this problem that came up that we talked about all the time, and we called it the Bing Maps problem. And I was reminded of this again as I was preparing to come down here for build, because I was chatting with my wife, figuring out what I was going to pack, and she asked if I was going to come down, if I was going to exercise while I was down here. I said, I don't know if I'll have time, but maybe I can walk from my hotel over to the conference center and use that. So I brought up Bing Maps. And let me go over here. Let's see, I'm staying at the Hyatt Regency here in Orange County, and I want to go to the Anaheim Convention Center. Let's see, there it is, Hyatt Regency Orange County, Anaheim Convention Center. Oh, and it's not going to like that today, so we'll try this spelling. There we go. So there you have it, nice, simple, about a 1.2 mile walk. Congratulations, you just saw Bing Maps demo, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about printing. So why would I bring up Bing Maps? What is this Bing Maps problem that I'm talking about? You'll notice in the upper right-hand corner that Bing Maps offers me the ability to print. Well, you'd expect that when I click print, I can go print something. Well, yeah. Before I can go print something, though, I kind of hit the speed bump along the way. I have this printer-specific view that comes up. And then more importantly, in this printer-specific view, I've got to actually make even more decisions before I can print. You know, I want to decide if I can print maps, or I can print text. I can print them both. Okay, well, that's what I want to print. There's another print button. I'm going to hit the print button again. Guess what? Another dialog. Another print button. I'd start to get a little bit frustrated if I was a user by now, because, you know, I decided 3 clicks ago I was ready to print. But because the way the system's designed, because the way that internet browsers work, Bing's actually doing the right thing here. That's just the experience you get. So I can actually go ahead and I can print right now. We didn't want to get you and your apps into that situation when we were putting together the Windows 8, the Metro printing experience. We wanted to make sure that printing was fast, fluid, convenient. You know, users swiped in, they found that it was delightful, they found that they hit the device's charm, they hit print, and they were ready to go. They were ready to print. But to do that, we needed to come up with a way to help you kind of solve this problem. How do you solve this Bing Maps problem? How do you let users choose content and do that? What we did was we introduced another way of using the print task and the print task options to allow you to actually customize not just what shows up in the order that things show up on the experience, but actually customize and provide options that themselves can show up on the experience. So I want to take some time and actually show you how we can do that. I'm going to jump up here in the print task initializing code, and I'm going to use a little bit of magic here. And I'm going to insert a bunch of new code using the code snippet feature in Visual Studio. And wish I could type that fast. Wish it always just worked that easy, but it's not. And with this new code, I've actually added support for doing new and interesting things on the printing experience. So let's walk back up and let's take a couple of moments to look at this code, look at some of the things that I've done, and I can explain a little bit more why I've done it. So you'll notice the first change that I've made is that rather than just initializing the print task, I'm now actually grabbing that print task that gets created out of the initialization process. And I'm grabbing that because I need to do some things with it. The first thing that I need to do is I need to go get this thing called the print task advanced options. Again, as we looked around and as we talked to people around Microsoft, we found that, you know, there's some people, they just need a very simple, very quick and dirty print experience. They're perfectly happy with just deciding what things show up on that print experience and shifting it. But other people wanted to be more robust. They wanted to deal with this Bing Maps problem. So we actually had 2 versions of the print task options. We had the print task options that shows up kind of as the generic basic stuff, and then we have this advanced version. Now the advanced version does everything the simple version does. It does it in some slightly different ways, so it's a little bit more cohesive. But it also adds some new functionality. One of the pieces of functionality that's present on the print task advanced options is the ability to create custom elements to actually show up as part of the print experience. It supports creating 2 types of elements. The first type is what we call the option list. This shows up as a combo box on the experience. So I got some code snippets here that's showing how you do that. Pretty quick, pretty simple. You know, I don't need to really explain. I think most of you can read it and figure out exactly what I'm doing there. The note to know is the first item, the first value, that's the ID of the element that's being added. The second, that's the display name that you want to show up. Just so you know, in addition to supporting option lists or combo box type behaviors, the print task advanced options also allows you to add string values or text values. So you can actually go ask the user for input and you can manipulate that. Well, item lists are smart. When you add that first option, they set the value. So you don't have to go set this, but I'm just showing here that you can go actually change it if you wanted to. But then you get to this really funny line. I never like code that I actually have to scroll over to because it always says that I'm doing something way, way too complicated. Turns out, unfortunately, this line kind of needs to be here, so I need to stop and talk about it a little for a second. If you remember correctly, I told you that Windows calls back into your application when the user decides to print. Well, obviously, when Windows calls back into your application, that means it's calling back and it's asking for something kind of out of context of what your UI is doing. In other words, it might not be on your UI thread. Well, XAML, all of that stuff over there, that actually runs on your UI thread, so you need a way to kind of jump back and get that context and tell that UI thread to do something. So the code that I have here is using a dispatcher, which is responsible for getting things back on the UI thread. And I'm actually running this inline function right here, which says to set the image of what's showing up in the output section as the actual value that's being passed in. Next, in the advanced options, I'm adding it to that displayed option property that John mentioned. This is what makes it actually show up on the user experience. I'm also setting this thing called pagination triggers, and I'm adding it to that list. What's a pagination trigger? Well, that's a way of telling the print task that, guess what? I might actually need to change the way my content looks when the user changes this option. So tell me to paginate if the user changes this option. And that way I can go do something smart or do whatever I need to. The final thing that I'm doing here is probably the real workhorse of the whole thing. Got an inline function here that I'm hooking up as the event handler for the option changed event. In other words, I'm listening to say, hey, guess what? Did the user change the value of what's showing up there? And if he did, what do I need to change that value to? You'll notice a couple of things. First of all, I'm checking for null. Well, why would I check for null? It turns out when you come back from that more settings option, we kind of don't know what changed because we've handed this thing called the print ticket over to the print manufacturer and they've handed it back to us. And we just are kind of saying, look, guys, sorry, everything could have changed. We're not going to send an event for everything possible. We're just going to tell you in one event, everything's changed. You may need to go deal with it. In the other case, the case where there actually is a value, you'll notice that I'm pulling it out and trying to figure out what it is. I then check to see if it's that ID that I care about, the time of day, and then also go ahead and once again use the dispatcher to change the image that's set up in the output. So here's the scenario one set image function. It's just a basic XAML function. It looks at the value of the item, figures out what image is associated with it, and then uses that to actually set the source. But you'll notice I got a little bit of a problem here, so let me quickly jump over to my XAML. And I actually need to make sure that this image value this is pre-release software. Every now and then when you jump over to your XAML code in Visual Studio, the XAML editor tends to hang on you a little bit. That's what we're seeing here. So I'm going to just set it to scenario 1 image. Let me actually run the app. Wow, I did it. I got all the code right. It built, it compiled. Nothing changes. Looks pretty much the same as it did before. But now, when I bring up the print charm and go into the Microsoft Presided Print Experience, you'll notice that my new time of day option has been added there at the bottom. And guess what? I can come in here and I can choose the nighttime image, the sunset, and go back to daytime. And you'll notice there in the background that the The actual content is updated in the app. In other words, it's getting my event processing it. You'll also notice this nice, really pretty spinning animation there where the print preview should be. Yeah, it's pre-release software. That happens sometimes. So we're aware of it, we're working on it, but it's there. But just to prove, I'll go ahead and jump up, print this, and when it comes out, I'll show you what I mean. So with that in mind, with all of that walked through, let me jump back into the PowerPoint and actually kind of talk through what we've gone through. The first thing is, we've talked about registering for printing and using the print contract from a XAML app. It's just like using it from an HTML5 app, an HTML5 JavaScript app, no changes. All the concepts are the same. This is a WinRT API. It works the same. Next, we've talked about how to use the print document to initialize the print task. By the way, here it is. Nighttime really did print. I wasn't lying. Thank you. My coding skills are, really good today. I'm happy. We've talked about initializing the print task with the print document. That's a XAML functionality that actually understands how to convert your XAML views into the XPS and the underlying technology required by the printing subsystem. We've also talked about the fact that when you use XAML, unlike when you use HTML5 and JavaScript, you have to take care of some of the work for yourself. You're going to have to deal with pagination on your own. You're going to have to deal with actually figuring out what XAML content you want to show up in the preview. And you're actually going to have to provide that XAML content for printing itself. Key thing to recognize here, preview, final content doesn't have to be the same. You can do one for screen, you can do one for print. We understand all that. Think about it, do what's right. The other thing I talked about was how you can make the print experience your own. How you can really get rid of this experience issue and bring printing down so it really helps your users and helps things get done. Talked about using the print task advanced options to add both an option list and a text string. Talked about the fact that you can mix the custom options. And I didn't really show it here, but I could make my custom option be the first thing if I wanted to. And I'm not required to just put them at the end. I can remove all of the Microsoft options and just put my own options. It's up to you. It's your print experience. Think of it that way. Final thing I talked about and demonstrated how to do was I showed you that using this option changed event, I can actually listen to what the user's doing on the print task or on the print experience and actually respond to and update my content to respond to it. So, just like HTML5, JavaScript, using XAML to print for Metro-style apps is simple. It's easy. We're not tossing all the hard work over to you guys anymore. We're not making you go do all of the stuff that for years you've had to do in Windows. But wait, sometimes people need that full control. Sometimes they need the ability to actually get down and to deal with the nitty-gritty of what's going on that printed page. We allow for that as well. You can use D2D or XPS, Direct2D or XPS, to actually generate and provide printed content. When you use Direct2D or XPS, however, it's going to be a little bit more work. It's enough work that I'm not going to have time in the couple of minutes that we have left to really go through a sample. But I just kind of want to talk through the process so you understand what's going on and what you need to do. The box is up there. You should recognize it by now. You need to register for the print contract. You need to ask and you need to tell Windows that, hey, I can print. I can do something. This is where your work starts. When Windows comes back and says, hey, guess what? The user wants to print now. You need to provide a document source. What is that document source? That's the thing that tells Windows how to print. It tells Windows what to print. In this case, it's your document source. You need to write it. It's not something that Windows can do for you. If you can't use the XAML one, you can't use the HTML one, you're going to have to write it. And because you're having to write it, you've got to paginate, you've got to create the preview pages, and you've got to create those final pages all on your own. But we still wanted to make it a little bit easier for you. So we've made some more enhancements in printing in Windows 8 to make it a lot easier for you to use your D2D content to actually produce and create great printed output. In Windows 8, there's a new D2D API called the D2D Print Control. And this also uses another D2D API around these things called command lists. What the print control does is it allows you to basically use a bunch of D2D drawing commands, draw everything to a command list as a render target, and then take that command list, effectively representing an entire page, and just hand it over to D2D and say, okay, now turn this into XPS for me. Thank you. The best part about it, it's hardware accelerated. This is D2D after all. So it takes advantage, and it uses a GPU, and it uses all of those things to figure out the right way and the most performant way to do it. Now that said, some people out there still need to use that XPS level, and they want that fine grain, that fine control over what's going on. So in Metro-style apps, you can still use and generate your own XPS if you need to. You don't have to use D2D, just like you don't have to use XAML, and you don't have to use HTML5 or JavaScript. So with that, we've kind of walked through the spectrum. We've talked about how you can do HTML5, how you can do XAML, and how you can use Direct2D and XPS. Let me bring John up and let him recap a little bit more.
Thanks, Darren. Swing back on. There we go. So in the keynote, you learned about how to build great Metro-style apps with your language of choice. And here we've showed you how the print contract works in Metro-style apps, showed you how easy it is to format your content in your Metro-style app, and we showed you how easy it is to use the Microsoft-provided printing experience and make it your own through customizations. So focus on the content and leave the complexities of the printers and underlying print system to Windows. So again, thanks all for joining us today. Whoops. There we go. Thanks for joining us today. We covered a lot of ground here, so I wanted to take this chance to reiterate the 3 points that we wanted you to leave with. So register for the print contract using the Print Manager and support printing of nicely formatted content. Utilize and customize the Microsoft-provided print experience to meet all your app's needs. And most importantly, Windows takes care of the printers for you, freeing you up to be much more creative. So make your users' imagination reality and go out there and start building Metro-style apps that print. Focus on the printing and allow your users the opportunity to take their content to go. So remember, Windows 8 is Windows reimagined, and your users will love printing from your app, and happy users equals more money. Have here a list of related sessions. So for those of you that are building Metro-style apps that print, you might want to check out 408, where Mark Podier covers the devices charm, including Play 2 and print. 914, where Chipolo Street covers XAML text from input to display to printing. And 769, where Mega Jane covers the high-performance graphics APIs, including the API that lets you go directly from screen to print. And by the way, there's a lot of other DirectX talks that you can check out as well. Just look at the build app available on your tablets. And if you happen to be a printer manufacturer and you're interested in some of the changes in the underlying print system, I recommend you check out session 238, where Justin Hutchings covers the V4 driver model with Frank Giorgiani back there. And in 652, where Mark Podier covers the printer manufacturer's ability to customize the print experience, again, replacing the More Settings button. And please also check out all of this documentation and samples utilizing this stuff, as well as the information that Darren and I covered today and in the other print-related talks. So you can go out there, start building great Metro-style apps that print right away. And thanks again. Please also visit us on the forums. If you want to post a question there, I encourage you to put the section title in the subject, so 679 in this case, as we'll be looking for your questions out there. And there's also a feedback link. Any and all feedback is most appreciated. And again, we'll be available now for probably the next 30 minutes, either right up here or right outside the room. Thanks again.